If you're fans and true believers of my videos, you may remember that some time ago I reviewed a game called Mini World War II, a truly minimalistic game that represented, well, all of World War II, the East and the West, everybody and everything, in a format that was playable in about 90 minutes or so. So you could play the entire war multiple times in a single evening. Small game, and now we have a new version, which is both the deluxe version with bigger boards, bigger box, bigger components, but it is also a reimagined, retweaked, rebalanced, and partially modified version that is called Domination. Domination is an upcoming game. It is the new version, the implementation of Mini World War II. Now it's upcoming, and the publisher asked me if I wanted to take a look at the prototype. So what you see in this video is the prototype. The final version may be different, but then I also need to give you a disclaimer. This is a preview video in the sense that it's about a game that is not out yet, but it is not a promotional preview. It is not a paid preview like sometimes people film for Kickstarter campaigns or things like that. It is a review in the sense that I played the game and I'm gonna tell you what I think about it, and I can say whatever the heck I want because I didn't ask for money, and that's it. And I like to say what I want in my videos. Now, the board of the game still resembles what you may remember from the original game. It is an unusual board. Imagine you're seeing the Earth from above, from the top, like from the North Pole, but then the Earth also was kind of smushed like a pizza or peeled like an orange and laid flat. And you have land connections, which are brown, sea connections that are blue, different types of areas, octagonal areas or coastal areas, so both land and sea units may end movement there. Square areas are land areas only, so only land units may end movement there. And then we have circular areas that represent sea areas, and only sea units may end movement there. So the map may look a little bit disorienting at the beginning, especially because there aren't names for the locations, and maybe some of these little maps are like, what is that exactly? Which is different. The original game had names of the locations in the boxes, but no outlines. Here we have the outlines, but not the names. I hope in the final version we'll get the names also. Now, so what you see here is England and France, and although again it looks disorienting, then you see that it really makes sense. Then you get to Germany and Italy, and if you keep going you have Eastern Europe and then the Soviet Union, and if you keep going you'll see China up there in the corner. And you keep going, and then you have Japan, and if you go across the ocean for far enough, then you get to see Australia and the United States, and then you're back in the Atlantic with German U-boats maybe, and then you're back to England. And you did the entire tour of the world in 80 days or less. The game lasts a number of turns, and from 1939 to 1945, each turn represents a single year, and you will try to take control of key location on the board to score victory points. That is the main source of victory points. Interesting plot twist, there is a threshold that you're trying to achieve to win the game. And if no one gets to their threshold until the end of the game, then the Axis player wins. What is fun is that the threshold changes. That is, it becomes lower and lower as the game progresses for the Axis player. So you still have a decent chance, even though your forces are probably shrinking by then. And the threshold becomes higher and higher for the ally player. So again, you have same level of challenge as you are gaining ground towards the end of the game. The game represents four main factions, which are the UK and the Soviet Union, those are the Allies, and Japan and Germany, those are the Axis. You always have those four factions, and then depending on the number of players, you will assign them to different players. Units. In the original game, you only had tanks and ships. Now we also have air fleets that can be used once per turn, and that's why they go back to base, and to indicate that you will flip them. And then we also have U-boats that only the Only the German player has. Now, my copy of this prototype came with two sets of components. One, these nice thick counters that are the ones that I actually used, and one, oopsie, oh, I almost destroyed the camera. And one is these, well, plastic tokens that are more representational, I guess. You see the tanks, and you see the air fleets, but I'm not a big fan. I find them just less functional, and so I play with these tokens instead because they're just fun to manipulate, nice tactile feel. Actually, the original game had little cute wooden game pieces, and I hope the final version of Domination will also have those, or at least that as an option. Maybe as a stretch goal, because to me that is better than the plastic toys. And even better than these guys here. So we have these different types of units. We have fleets. We have, again, tanks, air fleets, and so on and so forth. The game is card-driven. There is a deck of cards that are, well, there's a lot of stuff going on these cards. There is a band at the bottom of each card that represents the color of one of the factions, say Soviet Union, Germany, Japan, UK. And then there is a number here in the top left corner, which is the number of operation points that the card generates, plus a symbol in the top right corner that represents the kind of technology that you're developing if you play the card for its technological value. So basically 3 different areas, these two always available, this one available for the event only if you're playing it for the corresponding faction. So this card can be played for 5 operational points instead of 4, only by the Soviet player, and similar things. Oh, this is diplomacy. You can play the card as an event, you put it in front of you, it represents that now you have influence on that country, and simply that is the number of victory points that you score. This is a quick, simple way of scoring victory points. But it can also be taken away if another faction plays a card with the same for the same country. So simply diplomacy and counter diplomacy. Other things say here the UK player will be able to deploy an air fleet and deploy a naval fleet and execute a move. But again, that is specific here. The operational value can be used by anybody. And another thing we need to talk about is the technology tree. The original game did not have technology board, this one does. When you develop a technology, well, this simply means that you will play a card for its technological value there. You tuck it under your technology tree or technology board, then you reveal it at the end of the turn, because the technology that you develop one turn will take effect the following turn. And these technologies, so once you develop them, you will simply move one of these cubes or remove it to reveal an icon. Say, for example, if I develop this technology here, take this cube and I move it up here. Why is that important? Because now when I take this action, it only costs me 2 operation points instead of 3. If I develop that technology and I take that action, now that also costs me only 2 operation points. So what you see here is the standard number of operation points that the corresponding action costs, unless you reduce that. And if you also remove all of the cubes or develop all the technologies on one level of the technology tree, then you can unlock the other actions that are underneath here. For example, this allows you to develop a second air fleet if you also develop the radar technology, and so on and so forth. Different technologies, say the Enigma gives you extra information, the rockets let you force the opponent to discard cards, and so on and so forth. But the basic general actions are that, or the general flow is that players will receive a hand of cards. There's going to be a draft phase, a la Sushi Go, 7 Wonders, to determine the final hand of cards the players will have. And then players will alternate playing a card each and resolving one of the things here. The event, if they can and so choose, the technology, if they are building that technology, or the operation points, which is by far the most common things that players will do. So, you can spend operation points to deploy new units, and you can deploy a land unit in a region that has the factory symbol. The factory symbol like that one. You can deploy a fleet in a region that has the shipyard symbol. You can spend operation points, again the number depends on your technology tree, to move units that you developed. You may also spend operation points to destroy enemy units that are adjacent to yours. And this is interesting because you look at your technology tree and it tells you how much it costs you to destroy an enemy land units and to destroy an enemy C unit. So this is important because here is how much it costs to move one of your land units, how much to deploy one of your land units, and how much to destroy an enemy land units, regardless of which is the adjacent unit that is launching the attack. Similarly, cost for moving your C unit, cost to deploy your C unit, cost to move your C unit, cost to destroy an enemy C unit. And, well, this is pretty much the idea, because, of course, when it comes to operation points, a big thing is precisely to deploy, to move, and to attack. And so maybe you want to organize your operation points in a single turn. You're able to destroy an enemy unit and then move. When you move, you can move across any number of controlled locations as long as you control them, and in an uncontrolled location. Again, remember, if it's a blue connection, then a fleet needs to go there first to create a bridge. If it's a brown connection, then a land unit needs to move across it first. But this is pretty much the general idea. There are a couple of other things that represent the political complexities. Say you have the ally player may try to spend land lease actions to convince the United States to enter the fray. Then there will be cards that can be added to the deck. Those are American cards. And then finally also all the United States may enter the fight on the side of the UK. Also that happens if the Axis is attacking the United States. Similarly for China, that can be convinced to join the fight. However, the U-boats in the Atlantic and in the Caribbean, if there are units there, will make it more difficult. Also, these may threaten areas around it. So you have a couple of extra things there. But in essence, spend cards to deploy, move units, attack with those units, develop technology, influence the political situation, try to take control of key areas on the board, and to hold those areas, hold them for as long as you can. And the player who does that best, or I should say the faction, the side that is best at all of these things, wins the game. So, Domination, fun stuff. I enjoyed the original game, and I find this one just as enjoyable, probably more. Of course, there is a little more to learn before you can actually play the game, because there are a couple of extra rules, but not really many. Mainly, they concern the two new types of units that we have, the air units and the submarine units. There are a couple of other political wrinkles. Say Italy and France can be occupied by one side and they become functioning countries for that side, as opposed to just occupied territories like other locations. But in general, you have the original flow of the game with some extra elements. Sometimes it's small details. Say, for example, in the original game, all of the connection between spaces were only one kind, land or sea. Here you have two arrows between each location, which means that sometimes they're non-symmetrical. From one side to the other, you go through land, and one side to the other. From one side to the other, same locations, but the opposite direction, you need a sea unit there. so you have a little more to worry about, to think about, to plan. But in general, I like the original game and I like this one also. I like the enormous flexibility that you have in the way you can use your cards. Because developing technologies is sweet, but in the meanwhile, the opponent has taken control of the world, then it's a problem. Unless you were able to just slow them down or bite your bullet until they almost get to win, then you throw your mighty technologies at them. You may invest on diplomacy, you may invest on events, but probably in most cases you're gonna have different implementations or different balances, different ratio of technology development and application of those technologies. It's great to attack, but then you are stretching your empire thin, you don't have many units. It's great to build a ton of units, but then you're not expanding. All these trade-offs are extremely interesting and they play out very well. They did in the original game and they do here also. So everything that I said that was positive about the original game, I can simply repeat it here because that game was fun. It really still gave you a sense of the general event in such a simple, playable way with such flexible gameplay. That was in the original, and we have this here also. The new elements, I think they're fun. I don't know that I really gained much from France and Italy flipping from side to side, but I think there really is a real advantage in the underwater units, the U-boats that have that political element there as they affect the entrance of the US, for example, as they block Lend-Lease, but especially air units. I think they really do add a lot because you can use them to weaken the production centers of the opponent with strategic bombing. You can use them to attack units 2 spaces away that there was no way of doing before. So they add those extra elements there. The production to me is not just better in the sense that it looks better, but especially with the technology tree is also more functional. The trees are richer now, there's more stuff that you can do with them, you can visualize the tree better. So everything that was good in the original game is good here, if not better. Now, there was one element of the original game that is that from time to time you may get a little bit of a tug of war. If I get stuck taking control of Germany or France, and you spend your cards, every time I spend a card to put a unit there, you spend 1 to remove it. Then I put another unit, then you remove it. Then I put another unit, then you remove it. It can get a little bit like that. It was an element of the original game. It is still here, but of course it has to do more with the way players decide to get stuck on a single thing, as opposed to, you know what, I'll give that up, take control of that, because meanwhile I'm developing different things, I'm moving around there, I'm trying to isolate some other units. It's a big world. Yes, it's a world with bottlenecks. You cannot go anywhere from anywhere else. There's a certain order in which you need to move around to do things, to get stuff done. But at the same time, you do not have to get stuck on those bottlenecks. You can decide, I'm going to give up this area, pile up a bunch of defenders here, meanwhile snake around in some other ways. So it is possible to have those situations that feel a little bit like zero-sum, they feel a bit static, but that has to do with if you decide to play that way, it can be that way. If you decide to retreat in one direction, to do something somewhere else, to fight in another direction instead of retreating, that is perfectly fine. So the advantages to me are considerable because you're able to play a game that still has the flow and the feel of the original event. It's a big picture, mind you, it's big brushstrokes, but you can definitely still see the entire conflict here, and that's remarkable. The flow, the feel, to me is similar to what you have in Quartermaster General, another game that attempts and succeeds at giving you a playable simulation of World War II. That game is also card-driven, so there are many similarities here. Mini World War II and now Domination are even more minimalistic. They boil it down to an even smaller package, at least from the point of view of gameplay, because physically this is bigger than both Mini World War II and Quartermaster General. But gameplay-wise, a game that does give you that event in 90 minutes or less. and most importantly, that is fun to play, that has such flexible gameplay, so many different options, and really the game can go in different directions. The game can really develop in so many different ways. For a map that has so many bottlenecks, it is more sandboxy than one would imagine at first. Oh, by the way, another interesting thing. The game is not possibly all that great if you played solitaire, meaning both sides at the best of your possibilities. Unless you're me, I'm so used to play games in solitaire that is how I played it. In these days of social distancing, simply, I cannot meet with adult wargamers to play games. I tried to play with my 7-year-old daughter. She was a little bit confused by all the different possibilities, so I played the game by myself, switching sides. It's possible to do it, but I do not know that there are many people out there that will enjoy it that way. I do, but because I'm just a solo player fiend, I guess. I don't know. Domination, maybe not great for solitaire play, but if you have somebody you can play with at home, and then one day the pandemic will be over, and then you'll be able to play with whoever the heck you want. Domination, not super solitaire friendly, but other than that, a truly strong game. If you love the original game, I think you're gonna like this one even more. If you haven't played the original game, well, you may consider giving this one a try. You can probably skip that one and jump onto this one immediately. It's not that much harder. It's not like you need the previous game to ease yourself into the system gradually. Domination, a World War II sandbox, playable in an evening or less with flexible gameplay and a lot of fun to be had with. Definitely a strong package.